Hey everyone, welcome back to Prairie Wings. I am Merle, and in this video, I am going to be looking at my own car. It's a 2010 C6. It's a Grand Sport. It has the 6.2 liter LS3 in it, and it happens to have a Magnuson Supercharger on it. Now, that's where it gets a little dicey because, like a normal trades guy, you don't look after your own stuff, and I didn't on this. I got the car damaged and I fixed the damaged stuff, but I didn't go any further. And I am gonna fill you in on what I found out and how we're gonna attempt to fix it, and hopefully I can fix it. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep this short, but anyone that knows me is probably not gonna be short. Stock Grand Sport came with the 6.2, the LS3 in it, and it came with a Magnuson TVS 2650 heartbeat supercharger, and it was damaged. I ended up getting the car, fixing the supercharger, and this was all done by a shop that's supposed to be very reputable, and I'm not going to diss them. I'm not going to say their name. They do a lot of work, and I'm sure a lot of it's good, but in this case, I think they put a can tune in it because I raced it. I took it on holidays, and me being dumb, I should have data logged it and looked at it. It's my car, and I should be looking after it, but like you say, you never look after your own stuff when you're in this. Anyway, I ended up going through the tune after I did the first passes at the track. I thought it should have been a little bit quicker, even though this car is factory automatic, so it's 271s, it's not a race car. If you add power under the hood, you got to make sure that you don't overpower the rest of it. So hopefully I don't do that. I'm going to be turning it up. But anyway, the story is I data logged this thing after I went down the track, and I pulled like 5 degrees of timing out of it. I dropped the RPM because it was running out of fuel as well. And I also had to drop the shift points because the RPM ended up below the shift points. Thought I was going to solve it last year by putting a booster pump on it and putting LS9 injectors in it. And all I did was gain a couple hundred RPM. So you're going to want to, if you buy a car with one of these on, make sure that you go to a reputable tuner to make sure that you're not killing the motor, which I'm sad that I didn't data log it. But after I did the stuff, so before I did the modifications that I did to sit it where it was running at 12.2s, and it was also running at about 115 mile an hour out the top end of the quarter mile. After I took that like 5 degrees out of the top end and a bunch of other areas, a whole bunch of timing, and lowered the shift points and everything, I ended up running in the 11.9s and over 120 mile an hour at the top end. But both of them are spinning, but it definitely made a lot more power. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to be changing the fuel pump and putting a aftermarket one in. And as well, I'm going to be looking at doing, potentially in this video or a next one, the pulley change and the water methanol. And I'm going to have to build a kit because I don't actually have a kit for it, but I do have components for a kit, and I ordered another pump. Anyway, we'll be doing that as well. Okay, I have the driver's rear wheel off, and the fuel tank is right here. And this is our fuel lines. There's a crossover tube way up in there that we have to pull apart, and all of this stuff has to come down. So let's make that happen. Okay, that happened. If you take a look, the inner fender liner and the fuel tank saddle that it sits in, it's all on the ground, and the air ducting and everything, it's all out. Everything comes out with a 10 mil and a 13 mil socket. Next thing I need to do is get the fuel filler lines and vent lines out, and the wiring undone there, fuel line off, and there's just a tool that we shove in there and it'll release that clip. And we got to be careful because there is a half tank fuel. I also really don't want to fight with pipes in the way. So if we take a look, there's 2 bolts for the hangers there. You can fight with these all you want. Those bolts are pretty easy. And this right here. And it's a 15 mil and 13's up there. And then I'm going to get that exhaust out of the way. If you have the mild to wild valve, make sure you take that off. And yeah, this got a little bigger than what I thought. I ended up just finding it easier to pull all the exhaust off. I'm going to put wide bands in it anyway, and there is room to put them right in the front of the cat. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, with all the exhaust out of the way, which ended up bigger than I thought, and everything else, if you look up there, there's a black tab. Now this tab is a safety tab to keep this from rotating. You got to pop that tab off. There's ears. It's hard to describe, but if you're doing this job, you're going to see there's kind of ears at the top. You can pry on the back side in there with a pick, or on the outer ears, if you can flip it up, they just come out. I will do that. All right, I got that black tab off, and you can see it off to the right across from the green spot there. This is going to be hard for the camera to even focus up in there. I got it shoved up in there, but if you can see the ring now, all you have to do is reach up. Oh, yeah, right. My arms are too fat to do this. Reach up. I can't reach it with my ability. I'm going to pull the camera out. All we have to do is rotate it out of that. I took off the shifter linkage there, and all you have to do is reach up in there and give that a twist, and then that outer ring comes off. Now we got the crossover pipes inside. There is the crossover tube, and below it is an evap line, and that I have to get off yet. But I tell you what, if you ever run into a GM engineer, have a little chit chat with them and tell them you guys need to work on your own vehicles before you put any more out. Because I tell you what, I got those lines that are in there, which I'll show you, out, but they are messed up. I'm going to be replacing them. I already have them coming. They're 2 days away, but it's nasty. Fuel tank is on the floor. It's not real dirty. I'm just going to blow everything off really good. And that is not in the right spot. It is beyond me how engineers can't figure something out that would be a little smarter than that. Okay, just blew it off with air. I feel like I'm in a better mood after getting this thing on the ground. They make tools for doing this. I do actually own some of those. Not this one. I should be punching here, I guess. So my bad. I'll show you, I'll fix this, but I kind of screwed up a little bit. I hit on here, which is dumb. So I should have been hitting here. I'll fix that up, but we're good to go with that. Now, this module should just wiggle, 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 wiggle. It's way out. She's tight. I'm betting these are the hoses that come out through the crossover tube, and they probably stay in there. They release the same way as the evap hose example. Boy, that's nasty. I'm gonna do some figuring here with a light. Ta-da! Didn't capture that one on camera. Pretty frustrating. I thought I was in a good mood. Well, let's back that up. GM, in their infinite wisdom, left a big flashing on here. It physically, that module would not physically fit through that hole. It still won't go back in. I used feeler gauges, and I actually had to take a knife and cut off a big flashing that was left inside here. Physically still will not go in, so I am just going to take a flapper wheel and clean this up, and then we'll carry on. We'll get back to showing you how that cleaned up when we get back to putting this in. So this module is where the fuel pump lives. Why don't I just throw that down there for a minute? So he says he wants to work on cars, does he? Dummy. Anyhow, here's what we got going on. I ripped this apart, and I did it so you don't have to, I guess, or so that you understand what you're getting yourself into. So on this module assembly, what we have in here is, if we can look inside here, there is a rib in here that holds this in place. Now, getting this pulled out was a little bit of a challenge getting past the rib, but what I did initially is, if you saw the little black line previously, is this little black line here. Now, I'm going to explain what I've figured out with this, and I verified it by looking in a manual. This pump has this little tiny feed line that takes some of the fuel out of the pump, and I cut this off to get it out. And that gets routed through to this little tiny pump. And if you don't know what a Venturi is, you want to look that up. But what we have here is a little tiny Venturi pump. Now, this Venturi pump, what it does is it takes and pushes high pressure fuel through this little area. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little tiny Venturi in here. And a Venturi basically messes with pressure and speed to create a vacuum which will pull fuel in. Now that fuel gets pulled into this hole from the bottom of the tank, and it fills this well. So even if there is no fuel in this car, this well will siphon every last little drop out to feed the pump and keep it cool. So very important mod. If we're looking at the new pump, well, I'm putting a Walbro pump in, and there is no little tiny line on that pump that I can use. So very important. If you're going to do this mod, you are going to have to make sure you don't run your car low on fuel. That is an absolute must. Do not run on fumes. Don't pass the gas stations when you're in the mountains. Just fill it. Okay. Having said that, the fuel pump itself, these fuel pump bodies are like almost identical. Okay. The location of the filter, everything is exactly the same. So what I'm going to do, because I don't have any way of stabilizing this pump in here, I have pulled this apart, and I'm going to take, and height wise, if I compare it, where the filter is in the bottom of the tank, I'm going to be cutting this off right here. Now this pump is a hair, like slightly smaller than this pump. So I'm pulling this off. I'm going to cut this and I'm going to force it onto here, which is going to make it fit nice and tight in here. So that's the mod I'm going to do. I'll show you as it goes together. I'm not going to waste the time of me cutting this off and showing you, but this should work out really well. Now these tubes, they you may as well forget taking them off. I was gonna try, actually warmed it up and got it to rotate, but I don't want to have anything risky going on. So these tubes are actually easy to get. So I'm using a 220, probably realistically a 200 would have probably fit, 200 mil, but this is what I'm going to be using on here. I'm going to second that. I just took a look at how this fits in, and it looks like this spout might be a little bit longer than this one. So I'm not going to put the fuel pipe on here until I have this all together, and I might be going with a 180. I popped this together. I noticed it before I put it together, but if you look in here, this pump obviously is a little bit higher because this had quite the bend right here to just get around this. So I'm going to mark this and notch that out so that I have a clear line to get my hose up. I thought I'd just mark this out. You can see how much I got to pull out of there to have good clearance, and luckily the pump rotates in there enough that we're going to be able to pass the fuel pressure regulator. That is your fuel pressure regulator, because this, I am sticking with the non-return system. So this regulates the fuel in the tank, fuel pressure. On a quick side note, this normally has kind of a one-way valve that floats in there, goes inside, and there's a little divot that pops through that hole. And me being worried about this not having enough fuel in, just making its way in there, made me nervous, so I popped that out. Notch is done and in, and guess what? 180 mil hose is going to be perfect. So this is a 10 mil by 180 mil hose, and it's going to work awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if the wiring kit that came with this will be long enough to that I can just repin this with heavier gauge wire. That was my hope. I ended up measuring these wires, and they are actually 14 gauge, so they are going to be good. So what I'm going to be doing is just getting that fuel line on and get this back in the tank. There's the module with the hose in. Talking about wiring, I just found a point of interest. Those pumps are supposed to have a 15 amp fuse. So if I look in the Pico book and I go to 15 amps, well, let's just go to 20 amps. Say that pump pulls 20 amps. Well, the wiring's shorter than 20 feet in this car for that, and it says 14 gauge wire. Well, I measured the wire in here. The coating I didn't pull off on the outside. The OD is actually larger on the outside of the pump than it is on the inside of this wire. And everyone's got kits to upgrade the wiring for this, but if you look in this book, even if like it requests a 15 amp fuse, even if you pull 20 amps on 20 feet, 14 gauge wire is plenty large enough. So I have the wire cut at the front where the booster pump is, so I'm going to actually measure the core wire. If it's 14 gauge, I'm patching this baby and putting it back together. This is the flapper wheel that I used to clean this out. Now, I don't have the sending unit on here, but that's the way that's supposed to fit in there. Anyway, I'm going to get the sending unit on, get this baby put back together. Quick note though, because I used the flapper wheel in here, I dried this tank out till it was bone dry. And then blew it out, cleaned it out, spent a ton of time getting all that little fine plastic out of there. You're going to want to do that too if that's how you deal with it. Using a combination of this tool and this tool, and the most important thing was a lot of prayer. If you're not saying your prayers right, this ain't going to happen. You have to get the module in partway, and then you have to fish these lines out from the bottom to get them up to attach on to the pump. And I don't know, GM's just pure evil doing something like this. This is just nasty. So I have to get this looped in. This gets attached here. This goes through this loop and down into where the well is, where the pump is. And yeah, I'll fight with that off the camera. Okay, if I had to do this over again, what I would do is I would tie string to the loop and I would tie string to this. I would feed it all in, grab the string out of there and pull it up. Once you get this line in and you wiggle this line past that line, it almost goes into the exact place. They're molded just right. So finally, the sender is going to go into the tank. And the nice thing is, you know where it goes because that clips in. You don't want to clip it in until you get the ring on, but guess what? It's in there. We'll line that rest up later in a sec. Yes. This is a terrible job, GM and their engineers. I'm sorry, engineers, but you really failed on this kind of setup. There's little ramps in here and these clips have to go in, but the ramp's got a flat spot on. They don't actually hit where they need to go in there. So this job's going to be terrible too, but you got to get them in there clipped in. There's a narrow and a wide one. It has to go into slots in the inside. And once that's clipped in, it's going to be very important. And I did talk to a friend yesterday, and he said, as long as the words don't come out your mouth, they're not swear words. So I thought about curse words, but I just can't do it. No swears coming out. It's just a terrible job. All right, there is the pipes going for the crossover tube. And as you see, I lubed it up with some petroleum jelly. And I don't want to have any fights putting this back together. I'm gonna lube up the other ends as well, but as you can see, we got the O-rings in there, the blue, then a spacer, then a yellow, then this ramp piece. This has got a taper on the front side to help that tube line up. I decided when I took it out, I should have loosened the passenger tank. I don't know how much room it's given me, but anything is worth it. That is nasty. Need to lube it up and work at getting this tank back in. Hopefully it goes okay. The very first thing you got to do there is get that little evap line on, and it's above the crossover tube. I don't even think I can film it, but the key to that thing, definitely 100% is lube it. If you don't, you're going to fight it. Any of those evap lines or fuel lines, lube them. I am not positive, but this is looking back from behind the diff. My arm wouldn't be long enough to get up there, but if we look at the right side, get the light up in there. Okay, there's I don't know if you can see it. There is a little clamp that holds it in the middle. I got it out of that. And I just kind of chucked it in to where I think it should be. And I don't know if you can see. It looks like it fell into place. I don't know if I'll be so lucky, but I'm going to try and twist. If you look at the ring on the left-hand side there, that's the ring that needs to twist in, and it's almost into the plastic. I don't know if that's visible, but we're going to go for it. I thought it'd be that easy. It doesn't appear so. That ring won't go in. I'm going to fight with this again off camera. If I pull it out, I'll show you. I do have to say that I have been fighting with this for hours, and it finally went. And I learned that I have skinny arms. It's a bit of a pain. Anyway, what I have to say is that ring, when it's lined up to go in, is not hard. So I am saying if you have to use a tool on that little lock ring, there's an issue, because I was up there and I'm like, oh, do I need a tool? Whatever. Anyway, the thing that I found out with this is on the end of the crossover tube, I don't have a picture of it and I ain't pulling it apart to do it. There's a little taper and then it goes smooth into stainless, and then there's a little bulb. Well, this thing, it wouldn't go in, and I pulled it out, looked at it 1,000 times. Well, not 1,000 times, about 4 times. Everything looks smooth. I have so much lube in there, I'm going to be burning lube for fuel. Anyways, the last time I pulled it out, I raised the tank, lowered the tank, tried doing stuff with the passenger's tank to get more room in there. Anyway, I kept pulling it out, looking at it. Finally, it kind of fell into place really nice. It took a little bit of a push, but I saw that little bulge go inside the tank, put the ring on, and it just literally, it is that hard to get in there. So if you're messing with this, it is, be prepared to spend some time, be frustrated, but don't take the frustration out on your car. Just take your time. Don't jam it, because I am hoping this doesn't leak, and we're going to find out if it does or not. But I'm so happy this is together, and it's been hours. This has been brutal. It's a nasty job. GM's evil. Okay, I thought I'd fill you in a little bit here. This is the fuse panel. I've already got this thing all loose, snapped out of place, and it should be good. But anyways, this connection here, I have it off, and I was just doing some testing here. I stuck it back on. Just give me a sec. All right, I lifted it off, and this lifts out of the way. Once you undo these bolts, all of the power distribution stuff lifts out of the way. You could probably have left 2 on, but I just want this right out of the way. Okay, I'll fart with that in a second. Now, on the back of this one, you pull the back off of this. Okay. And if you look here, and I turn it over, there's a gray wire in the back there. That is the fuel pump wire, and that is where you take your booster pump and tie into. Now, I am going to measure this, and if it is a 14 gauge wire, that will handle the amperage to run the fuel pump with like less than 5% voltage drop. I looked up the specs online for this fuel pump, and it says that the maximum voltage under working load, or the maximum amperage under working load at 13.5 volts is 18.5 amps max. And if it's deadheaded, running deadhead, it could go up to, it was just over 20. And so 14 gauge, the length of wire, we should be good up to 20 amps. So that is what I'm hoping. And I will patch that back together if it is a 14 gauge. If not, this is the wire that I will be tying into to trigger a relay. You can buy the upgraded relay kits that they have, but the relay lives in the rear wheel opening, and I don't like that. So if I do it, I'm going to be putting a relay under the hood. I apologize, I didn't give you very much detail. So the fuse panel here, fuse and relays in there. All you need to do is undo the clips on the side of this to lift it up. Undo these bolts. They're 7mm socket to get them out. Have to undo this, and then this lifts out of the way. And part of the time, the connectors on the bottom stay down. Some of them stick on. Anyway, that wire that I had was in this one here. And if you look inside of the lid of this, you'll be able to identify the fuel pump relay. Doesn't matter. The thing that I did find out is the wire going to the back is a 14 gauge. So I am going to give this a try with that big pump in there and the factory wire. We'll see how it goes. Important takeaways for doing this job. Yep, tank had to come out again. And that was me a dummy. Those push-on lines on other vehicles, I haven't had to clamp them. This is a bigger pump than I've put in a factory tank without doing a module. So the lines need hose clamps on them. It came out again. Me getting it out this time, knowing everything was not seized, whatever. It was actually pulling exhaust, everything. It was probably an hour. Still fishing through the tank, got to get it back in. But anyway, the very first takeaway that I would really say though is, you know, you have the tank out and getting it out is the biggest problem. The second time I took it out, I was able to get a piece of flat iron shoved way up in there to separate the hoses on the inside, and it worked. I don't think it would have worked with the original hoses that were in there because they were really hard to get out. So I would just order those hoses before you start the job. I wouldn't even second guess it. Just order the hoses. It is back together. Fuel tanks are in. Definitely was a job where you kind of want to pull your hair out, but I don't have much to pull out, so it wasn't that bad, I guess. No, this is a job. It was probably the worst fuel tank replacement job I've ever had to do. But you know what? It's done now. I'm hoping that everything works out good, and we'll find out because this is going straight on to the dyno now. I've done some other mods to this where we put widebands in it as well as water methanol. So we'll see how that all works out. If you don't mind, check those videos out. And thanks for watching this video. And if you don't mind, please like, share, and subscribe as well. I really enjoy when you guys comment and communicate with me. I could have done some things better. If you got some helpful hints, that'd be great because you never know. Might have to come out again. That's a pretty big pump I put in there, so hopefully the car will handle it.